mainstay in our beautiful demo garden, and today I'm going to talk about raised beds, rotating plants, and transplanting new plants. So right here we have a nice beautiful raised bed at Mainstay, and raised beds have a lot of advantages to them. They are much easier to weed. Because the soil is nice and loose and doesn't get stepped on and they're raised up off the ground, it's harder for weeds to get in there, and when you do get weeds, it's a lot easier to pull them out. So some disadvantages with raised beds is you can't move them once they're there. So they're pretty stationary, but they're really good if you have any sort of mobility issues or like back issues. You don't have to bend all the way down to the ground to garden. So they're really accessible to pretty much everybody. So today we're going to do a theme for like a pasta garden. So we've got a tomato plant here we're going to transplant. Whoops, as I knock them over. And a little pepper plant right here that we're going to transplant. So our tomato plants used to go in that garden over there. So I'm actually going to go and get the tomato cage from the old garden. Use this guy because less likely to knock over the Jenga tower of tomato cages. Got a nice tomato cage ready for my new little baby tomato plant. And also in our garden, we have a little bit of dill that's migrated from our herb garden over there. So we're just going to kind of leave him for right now. I'm going to move my tomato cage so everyone can see what I'm doing. So, the other thing I wanted to point out, these are really nifty little transplant pots. This is a tomato seedling I started from seed, so it's a little bit smaller than what you'd see if you went to like Home Depot and bought a plant. And I started it as little teeny tiny baby seeds, and then when they got bigger I transplanted into these special pots. So, to share one of my gardening mistakes here that I have made before, and I'm going to share with you because this is a new one for me. These pots are great because you just stick them in the ground and they biodegrade, and it helps the plant with transplant, which is really stressful on little baby plants. It helps keep part of their home with them and just gives them... June knocked over my tomato cage. It gives them a nice starting point where it's not so much of a shock to go from one place to another. Because they biodegrade, if you write on them to label your plants, it will eventually, the more you water it, the writing will fade. Not a big deal with my tomato plants, but I also did a tray of cucumbers, squash, and pumpkins, all that look kind of similar when they're small, and they got mixed around, and now in my garden I'm going to have some surprise cucumbers that pop up in the middle of my squash, and that's just one of those mistakes you kind of have to learn from. So if you get these biodegradable plants, get tags, don't write on them. So I broke off a little bit of the bottom of it just so the roots can kind of right away grow into the ground or into my raised bed. And I'm taking my trusty little trowel here, and I'm going to dig a nice sized hole, not too deep because I don't want to submerge my plant into the dirt all the way. Just enough. See, if I put it in there, that's a little too deep. So I'm going to fill it back up a little. There. And then fill it in. So my little tomato plant is going to hopefully settle in nicely right there. And then I'm not going to do it right now, but as soon as I transplant, I'm going to give each plant a nice healthy drink of water, and that'll help again with the transplant shock, and it'll just give it a nice warm welcoming environment where it's got water and nutritious soil ready to go. So here's my little tomato. I'll put my tomato cage over it right away, because if you forget and wait too long, then they're too big to put tomato cages around. Alright, and then over here, I've got my little pepper plant. So this is another one that I started from seed. So you see it's kind of small, a little smaller than what you'd get at at the store. And again, I'm going to just kind of open up these little seed pods here so the roots can kind of grow through. But this is biodegradable as well. And this is a soil pod that will come with, if you get like a seed cart starting kit, they'll come with these little flat discs of soil, and when you add water they poof up into these little pods here. So that's what that was. And I'm going to do the same thing as my tomato plant. So traditionally I do not like to plant tomatoes and peppers too close together, but I feel like I've got them kind of kitty corner here. So they should have plenty of room to have their own space. And I'm going to do the same thing with my little pepper plant here. Okay. So hopefully our pasta garden will be ready and growing soon. We'll have peppers and tomatoes. So happy gardening!